footage right here is showing fresh strikes on Iran, but there's a new adaptation of these strikes. Not just radar dishes, not just patrol boats, bridges. You can see also striking the different SAM systems that are along roads, completely trying to cut off Bandar Abbas. That's one of the main ports in Iran, one of the biggest areas where Iran harasses the Strait of Hormuz from. So the gloves are coming off fully against infrastructure now, with bridges that connect Bandar Abbas and southern Iran to the rest of Iran, where weapons can flow through, fuel can flow through, are being systematically decimated. So what you're watching right here, these aren't just airstrikes, these are logistic sieges, absolutely shutting down the IRGC's ability to resupply. We're going to get into the full strike package, how this is all going on, and where this leads to, and then stay for the global roundup section, because you all have asked me to review that US Navy Blue Angels low flyby over the beach, this little clip right here. I'm going to review that full thing in the global roundup, and also we're going to talk about some new developments in Ukraine, and also some things that are happening with China that are just wild. That'll happen 3/4 of the way through the video. So let's rewind a little bit and talk about this series of strikes, because CENTCOM just completed its 6th consecutive night of strikes against Iran last night, but this time the target set has changed. The first 5 nights, radar sites, missile batteries, coastal air defenses, IRGC patrol boats, IRGC headquarters, but now bridges in Hormozgan province, the Chabahar port control tower destroyed for the 3rd time, hitting it again. Military logistics infrastructure cut on the coastal corridor connecting Bandar Abbas. You can see this target imagery right here of Bandar Abbas, Iran's primary port, connecting that to Tehran. What did it though? Fighter jets, aerial drones, warships, all of them acting in coordination on one night. And an objective is to cut the roads Iran uses to move missiles to the sea and weaponry to the sea. And then also President Trump revealed that Iran launched 111 Iranian missiles at the USS Abraham Lincoln, and every single one of them was shot down. So that tells you about how precise the carrier strike group is in the Persian Gulf right now. So Iran built their supply line. CENTCOM basically brought their delete key that looks like a 500-pound bomb, and now Iran's feeling a little bit ghosted. So Iran's basically getting the ultimate ghosting right now. They built a supply line to bring weapons to what is their front line, and now they're getting catfished. Instead of weapons like AK-47s showing up, they're just seeing hellfire explosions. But here's what just happened over the last 24 hours. We know that Tuesday, CENTCOM reinstated the naval blockade of Iranian ports. Wednesday, the Curacao-flagged MT Belma, that's a very large crude carrier, ignored multiple warnings and headed straight for Karg Island. That's Iran's primary oil export terminal. A U.S. aircraft put AGM-114 Hellfire missiles directly into its smokestack, disabling the vessel. And that sends a message to every Shadow Fleet captain out there running the same game and the same calculation. And then Thursday night, night 6, CENTCOM hits 6 highway and railway bridges in Hormozgan province, the Garye Bridge on the Bandar Abbas Khmir Law route, 2 bridges on the Khorasan Road, bridges near Latadan, Kashar, and Maro village. The Chabahar port control tower was struck for the 3rd time and completely destroyed this time, from what the reports are saying. CENTCOM confirmed the strike package included fighter jets, aerial drones, and warships, and that over 50,000 U.S. service members across the Middle East remain vigilant, lethal, and ready. And then focus on that part, the 50,000 part. Will there be an invasion? Is that something that could happen? Well, that's a direct statement saying more than 50,000 U.S. troops are right there ready to go. Iran's response, obviously, they're going to launch missiles at Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Qatar, and in a new threshold, a strike that damaged a power and water desalination plant in Kuwait. Both sides are now hitting infrastructure. The character of this war has now changed and shifted into a whole new level. So CENTCOM's hitting the actual highway that those IRGC generals down in the Strait of Hormuz actually reload from, and at this point, they're basically giving those generals the war version of blue balls. So I know you all watch this channel because you want the real story. You want to know what's going on with the systems, the tech, the gray areas behind the scenes, not just the headlines, the actual intelligence behind them. So you all have been asking for more. How do we go deeper? How do you get more information? Well, I built a community to help us do just that. And I'm going to include personal stories from my time flying 70 combat missions and from lessons that I learned on the Thunderbird, the strike platforms and the strategy that we're seeing right now, because This strategy, it looks tight. Bandar Abbas, Iran's primary port, everything that moves through the Strait of Hormuz, missiles, fuel, IRGC resupply, weapons headed to proxy forces across the region, flows through roads and rail lines that connect Bandar Abbas to central Iran and ultimately Tehran. The highway and railway corridors through Bandar, Kamar, and Kamir County connect the coast. From Lar, the roads run north into the Iranian interior itself. So you cut those bridges and you've created a logistical siege without placing a single naval mine, without having boots on the ground. So when you cut off those supply lines, you cut off the logistics, you cut off the ability of the IRGC to even eat, much less fight. And then targeting the VLCCs, those very large crude carriers. You acronym junkies, we're waiting for that, I know. Targeting those with Hellfire missiles launched from F-18s, MH-60 helicopters, MQ-9 Reapers, other advanced drones could be up there as well. I personally think the Shield AI X-Bat would be perfect for this mission because of its stealth qualities, its ability to loiter for a long period of time, and the fact that it's powered by a jet engine. Also, the Anduril Fury drone just recently fired an AIM-120 missile. So having it fire a Hellfire is basically a step down from that. I mean, the AIM-120 is incredibly complex, so putting a Hellfire on that, replacing the AMRAAM with a Hellfire missile, having that go up and take out these ships just makes a ton of sense to me, and I think this is one of the best advances in military technology in a long time. Having CCAs and drones that can go out there and help the fighter pilots that are airborne in their F-35s, F-22s. Basically, they can cover a massive swath of ocean, and this is something that nobody's talking about. The naval blockade isn't just the Navy. Obviously, that's a massively important part. They're the VIPs of that, but you have to have air power up ahead. And if you could create like a metal net up above the Strait of Hormuz using Anduril Fury drones, AI X-Bat drones that actually have teeth and the ability to counter the IRGC, now you've really got something that can create this blockade and make it last for as long as the United States wants it to. But obviously, Iran is going to answer, right? The enemy's always got to vote. They're a little more than just rhetoric. I mean, rhetoric is their main weapon. But what we're seeing from the IRGC is they're trying to double down on their strategy. They were trying to flow more and more weapons into southern Iran, and the U.S. military just systematically cut the chain. They just cut off the supply chains and the smuggling routes that were being used to bring in weapons to southern Iran. So now the IRGC is going to start getting very nervous as not only their money is being bled dry by the blockade, but also their actual bullets, arms, food, water, all the things that they were getting from those supply chains are now being systematically decimated. And then remember the fact that the USS Abraham Lincoln was able to strike down 111 missiles that were supposedly fired at it or Gulf partners. This just shows the massive capability that those carrier strike groups have in the region. So having two of them there, teaming those up, this is why, a big part why, Iran's missiles haven't been able to hit the target at anywhere close to the level that they want it to. It looks to me like Iran gets a lucky missile through here and there, but ultimately most of these missiles are struck down. And Iran's supply chain is dwindling smaller and smaller by the day, with what's being said now is they can only fire a dozen or so per day. So that just shows the sheer might of that iron dome that's created by those two carrier strike groups. I mean, that's just wild. Hats off to all the sailors that are in that region making that happen. They're true heroes, keeping Iranian ballistic missiles from slamming into neighborhoods. Now you made it to the global roundup section, my friend, so here's a few stories that you need to know. So Zelensky in Ukraine, he fired Ukraine's defense minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, this week, the 35-year-old architect of Ukraine's drone warfare program. He's the man who helped isolate Crimea and sink 90 ships in the Sea of Azov in a single week because he and General Syrskyi couldn't work together, supposedly. So there was another general that this guy couldn't work with. But it seems like Ukraine's kind of revolting. There's been protests. People really liked that ousted minister, so we'll see what happens in that situation. But having fractures within an administration, especially someone who's dialed in and targeted into the drone program, that just doesn't seem like the best thing that's going on. Oh, and this just came in. It turns out that China was able to hack into 220 million voter files during the 2020 election cycle and on. So it looks like the Trump administration is doing everything they can to try to secure voter files and pass the SAVE Act to try to protect election integrity. Oh, and then also China flatly denied it, obviously, as they go. But here's another story that ties directly into the war. Chinese firms with documented links to the People's Liberation Army, Visor Vision and Jinggang Technology have been marketing geospatial intelligence on U.S. force positions in the Middle East, and the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission confirmed China's Beidou navigation system has been used by Iran to enact direct attacks across the region. Yeah, China saying one thing and doing the other. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, China, we're not really surprised. Oh yeah, and you all wanted me to watch this Blue Angel footage, this low pass over the beach, so let's have a watch here. Wow. Yeah, that is definitely low, very low, but here's the thing. These pilots are trained for exactly this type of mission. I mean, that's probably about 30 feet in the air. That's going to knock off some swimsuits for sure, but it's also going to inspire an entire generation. So the fact that the Blue Angels are trained for this makes it okay in my book. Actually makes it awesome in my book. Makes it way better than okay. I think it's amazing that they're using their skill, they're harnessing the skills that they've been trained to do to inspire generations of young people. Wow, that's a really low pass there as well. It would be different if this was a unit that wasn't trained to do this. So obviously avoiding accidents and safety is the number one thing. So making sure that untrained units, regular fighter squadron units that aren't trained to fly down to 30 feet like this, don't actually do this, but leave it to the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels. You made it to the 40 chess strategic analysis section, my friend. So here's what Iran wants, and it's definitely not what they're saying publicly. Iran's end state is legal and operational control of the Strait of Hormuz as a permanent post-war condition. Permanent. A toll booth on 20% of the world's oil supply, enforced by the threat of IRGC missiles, patrol boats, worth trillions in leverage over every energy importing country on Earth. That's what they want. They want ultimate power. The June MOU was Iran's attempt to get that in writing. The IRGC's decision to break the ceasefire by attacking commercial vessels wasn't a tactical error. It was a test of whether the U.S. would actually enforce the terms or look the other way to preserve the diplomatic framework. And so we're seeing now the U.S. is doing everything but looking the other way. And now they're running into an administration that actually has a backbone that's willing to use the amazing military men and women in uniform to protect a vital international waterway and keep the IRGC, that ISIS-type organization, from exerting any more control over the globe than they already have, systematically crushing their proxy armies, sending the big middle finger to the IRGC saying, no, there's a new sheriff in town and you're not going to be the one to control the world's energy. What do you guys think? What do you think happens from here? I would love to know your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it.